Hello and welcome to Chocolate and Cheese with him and her.
Hello, Lulu です。
That's right, that's our very own Lou, the Japanese.
日本人。
Yes, today we'll be talking about the giggles. Uncontrollable laughter. Did you know that giggling can get you thrown out of places?
Yeah, of course.
It can get you fired.
Of course.
And it can even get you seriously injured. That's maybe something
That's
that
what
you
I don't
didn't.
know.
That's what you didn't know, and I will tell you why. Well, first let's start with things like getting thrown out of places. Now, I clearly remember when I was back in school, I had terrible giggles. I just couldn't stop myself sometimes from laughing. And you see, the thing is, there wasn't anything particularly funny, and this is what giggles, this uncontrollable laughter is all about. It just takes you and maybe somebody else who is as hysterical as you are. And it could just be anything. It could be a teacher back in school. It could be a teacher saying something which sounds a little bit odd, and you start giggling. And then the neighbor just next to you, whoever's sitting next to you, they start as well, and then you're off, and it just doesn't stop. I mean, it happens so many times back in school. I mean, it was also obviously funny in the beginning, but then it became just terrible. When you cannot stop, and then people start noticing, and the teacher starts noticing, and he tells you off.
And it becomes even worse.
It becomes worse, but also funnier. I mean, it's just terrible. And I just remember this. At one point, I got thrown out of class. It was that bad. And you are obviously outside. You compose yourself again. You feel actually quite sorry, and then you back in. Starts again. I mean, seriously, it was that bad. So I clearly remember this, and I mean, you can clearly see that the punishment of this kind of behavior, the way that the teacher used to do that, and I hear this from other people as well, not just in school as well. Like when people get really frustrated and they start shouting at you, you're actually making it worse. So I think, and this is maybe my little advice, to people, if you don't have your giggles yourself, try to have a little bit of sympathy. It is terrible. It's, people are really not doing this on purpose. I most definitely wasn't interested in any kind of, pranking or upsetting the teachers. I mean, I really didn't. It was something that you just, it's just a part of you, and you hopefully at one point grow out of it, or maybe you don't. I still have this sometimes. Now, apart from these situations like, school or even church, I also had this in church, it's similar, and then it's just so embarrassing. The other situation, fired, or maybe at least not being hired. A lot of the actors in television and movies, when they get this a lot and they can't get through the scenes and they can't finish the TV series, they can't finish the movies, then people will have to be replaced. It's funny in the beginning. It's obviously brilliant for the blooper reel, for the funny outtakes that everybody's looking forward to, especially when the movie is quite shite. But if you are known in the industry that you just can't hold it together and it's just terrible, you get in trouble. And I think, ultimately, if it's a really bad case, obviously everybody gets the giggles. I clearly remember there's Ricky Gervais, super funny guy, British actor, a comedian. He gets this a lot, but I mean, he's still so successful, so it doesn't really matter. But it's if you Google it, if you're on YouTube, check Ricky Gervais outtakes. It's just this guy is hysterical, and I was like that actually. The high-pitched laughter, and you just can't get through it. All right. Now, you might wonder, what do you actually do in these situations, when you just can't control yourself? Now, the things that I've tried, which are more or less successful, is trying to think of something terrible.
Oh,
I mean,
for example, imagine my dog is dying.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it has to be.
Missing my dog.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't find him. Oh, that's terrible.
Absolutely. You have it has to be, I mean, quite terrible. And it has to be also quite concrete. I mean, you can't just say, ooh, death. No, it's not concrete. You have to be, specifically thinking about a terrible disease that I will have. I mean, I know that sounds really morbid, but it's kind of like the only thing that kind of works. And like what you were saying, if an animal lover and the idea that your pet is gone missing, it's gonna upset you. It's really
straight away.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a great way of distracting. So that's one technique. The other one that I've tried out was actually to. Okay, people might start thinking that I'm a little bit masochistic, actually, but to induce a little bit of pain to yourself. I mean, you could just squeeze your hands, or maybe poke yourself into the side, scratch yourself a little bit. It's a way of distracting yourself and using some kind of uncomfortable feeling. Well, I would say pain. That sometimes works. So especially the combination of thinking about a terrible disease and poking your sides. Obviously, the funny thing is if somebody's watching you.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you imagine what you are doing in that situation.
Yeah.
If you imagine in your head, it's going to be funny again.
That is very true. That is very true. Yeah, you shouldn't ponder about the way that you might be looking to others, because you're going to look like an absolute nutcase. That's very true. The third technique, I haven't actually tried this myself, but I'm thinking about this. Maybe not for myself, but I think maybe for some of our listeners. If you are suffering from the terrible disease that is the giggles, crying. I mean, at least to pretend you're crying. You see, when you get the giggles, your whole body is shaking, your face is red because you're trying to suppress it. That's the thing. And then you see other people trying to suppress it, and all you see is red faces and shaking bodies. And that in itself is actually so funny to look at. But anyway, I completely lost the train of thought right now. Yeah, it's my third technique. So you're trying to you want to come across as crying because it kind of looks similar. You have a red face, you're shaking, trembling, and your eyes are watery. Because you see, when you giggle, I cry. I actually cry. I'm exhausted. Okay, so you can almost pretend you're crying. You see, sometimes when you are laughing like absolutely mad, like when you watch a comedy program, I sometimes wonder, are you crying?
Yeah.
Because it looks kind of similar.
And tears coming out.
Absolutely, yes, you are crying. So that's my third technique. I've never tried it myself, but I think this is probably quite powerful at funerals when, again, you just can't be found giggling and it's just really inappropriate. But it happens, and because, again, it's a situation where this is going to be sanctioned. You cannot, you have to have this sad face, and if you start, and this happens with people, it's the psychology behind it. Like, if you know that you shouldn't be doing something, it just bursts out. And that's so I feel for everybody who's suffering from a similar condition. Giggles.
This is quite good.
You could cover yourself. That's right. That's what you're on a radio show. Nobody can see what you're actually doing.
That's what I was doing in the classroom.
That's right.
If I cannot get rid of.
Lou was covering her face because she thought that the listeners can see that. No, I would have to remind you, you're on a radio show. You see, the thing is, you can cover yourself.
With the elbow.
Yeah, but you're still shaking, and other people can see it. Yeah. Now, the last point, and this is the dangerous bit, and people will probably feel quite confused. Like, how can this possibly be dangerous? Okay, now I'm telling you why. Although my giggles have dissipated over the last few years, I suppose I'm getting better. I have recently started having really funny thoughts at the dentist. Now, I think that's probably the worst place to get the giggles. I can imagine that there are other places. But in terms of medical treatment, it's definitely the worst place because there is a dentist inside your mouth with very sharp instruments. And you see, I start having funny images which you cannot get out of your head, and you start the giggles, and it's just, again, this whole thing about trying not to think about something funny, it has the exact opposite effect. You're trying to not think about something like a pink elephant, you're going to be thinking about a pink elephant. And whatever sets you off, whatever makes you laugh, you're going to have that. So that's something quite dangerous. And I haven't quite figured out what to do in this situation. I mean, I was lucky enough that it wasn't hysterical, because you see, I didn't have somebody else to giggle at the same time. This is always the problem when you are in situations and you know that there is somebody who's a bit like you, like a friend. In my case, also, it's my mother, who also has that very, very, very similar. Well, it's actually the same condition, but in the dentist you're on your own, so it's kind of an easier scenario because there's nobody else. But if you imagine, if there was, I don't know, if they were treating several people at the same time, can you imagine if I knew that there was somebody next to me who get the giggles? I would mess up my face. Right. So, these are these are the situations that can, you can find yourself in when you get the giggles, which can get you, well, like I said, thrown out of places. It can get you fired or maybe not hired anymore, and they can be dangerous.
Yeah.
So
That's it.
I think it's very useful to have some kind of techniques available where you can kind of suppress those laughs. And like I suggested earlier. Now, if our listeners can relate to this, maybe you have some similar, anecdotes for us. We would love to hear that, and especially also when you have methods of how to suppress it. Especially if you have a method how to suppress giggles when you're at the dentist, because that's dangerous.
They should have medicine for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be on medication. I'm gonna be on psychiatric medication to suppress my giggles. I think I'm gonna go out now and have a bit of a laugh.